Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Miss Texas Show. This is a show where we share the stories of our victims and survivors of sex trafficking, domestic violence, sexual assault, and other violent crimes. On this show, we also partner with Hope PYX Global. It is a Houston based 501c3 nonprofit organization, and at this segment, we invite our community leaders to share their knowledge and resources with the community on these crimes. And if you would like to be a guest on this show, you can contact us on Facebook at MSUSA Texas. That is Miss USA Texas. You can also email us at msusatexas@gmail.com. Now, without further ado, today we have a special guest. As you all know, that January is Human Trafficking Awareness Month. And today we have Miss Jen Edwards. And I was reading Miss Edwards' bio. Oh my gosh, so many achievements. So I will have to cut it short, just to pick out the major achievements out of the achievements. So she is the president and CEO of Paving the Way. It's a fierce disruption in the cycle of child trafficking. And she has been featured on CNN, Marie Claire UK, NBC, The Epoch Times. And most of the popular topics that she talks about includes child trafficking in America, grooming recruitment tactics on social media, trafficking awareness and prevention for teachers, PTA, and administrators. So as you all know that since the pandemic, the crime rate has gone up. Unfortunately, a lot of us are either, in the beginning locked down, and later on, social media has become one of our, how do we say, pals, because we're not able to really connect with people socially like we used to. And so today I would like to focus on the grooming tactics on social media. So let's welcome Miss Edwards. Thank you so much for being on our show today.
Thank you so much, Aileen, for the invitation. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some of our knowledge and really educate and empower people about what's going on. It's really easy for people to stick their head in the sand, and because there's so much happening right now with you've got stay-at-home orders, you've got people defying stay-at-home orders, you've got political unrest, you've got who's going to be our president, you've got the flu, you've got kids home from school, you have parents, economic unrest. There's a lot of things going on in the world, and it's easy to focus on any one of them and get overwhelmed. And what happens a lot, what is overlooked, is what's happening online with our children. And we've been at this since March. The very first time the University of Central Florida sent out a post and said, we're shutting down school. I'll never forget, I was sitting in the Publix parking lot and I was like, ugh. And I thought, and I remember sending a post, and my comment, and it was that you watch, they're going to shut down public schools next. And as soon as I hit it, I was like, oh my God, they're going to shut down public schools next. I'm like, oh my God, we've just put millions and millions of children at risk for online predators, because wherever children are, that's where predators are. Exactly. And we actually started an online YouTube campaign right like 2 weeks later, before all the chaos happened, because we were like, look, we know our children are at risk, and we've got to educate people. So we've really been on the forefront, the bleeding edge, so to speak, of this conversation since March.
Thank you for being a hero in this. As a lot of us, they don't even know like what human trafficking is. So can you tell us a little bit, for those who doesn't know?
Sure. Well, mostly, Aileen, when we say human trafficking, what comes right to mind is overseas, the looks of gaunt children or gaunt adults holding a brick. That is human trafficking, labor trafficking specifically. However, that's not the only kind of trafficking there is, and that's not the only place it happens. So worldwide, I'm going to start global and bring it down locally, right? Worldwide, we've got about 43 million people enslaved around the world. And I assert that number has gone up since April of this year. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing, in the United States, the FBI and Homeland Security both estimate there's approximately 300,000 children a year in the United States that are lured into this life. Now, since March, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has said online child exploitation has gone up, 300 and 400%. In April of last year, there were 1 million online cyber tips for child sexual abuse material. April of 2020, it was 4 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
That speaks itself, isn't it?
It sure does. And that's one of the reasons why we've been nonstop educating people. And I so love and appreciate the opportunity to be on podcasts and radio shows and, really any platform our mission ambassadors and I can speak on, because we know that's more education getting out to the world. And that's what's important is, our motto is educate, empower, prevent. Because once people are educated really about what human trafficking is, and I'll get to that in a second, then they're empowered about how it happens and how to disrupt it, so we can prevent. So human trafficking, the governmental definition, okay, you can go on to any website and type it up. It's, force, fraud, the use of force, fraud, or coercion to have someone do something that they wouldn't normally choose to do without payment. So that's where forced labor comes in, domestic servitude, the labor trafficking of kids carrying the tubs and selling stuff, along with sexual exploitation. Now with children, anyone under the age of 18, none of that needs to be present, because we're clear that a child would not choose to live that life. Absolutely. Not a cognitive choice. Because see, here's the thing. Our brains aren't fully developed. Our prefrontal cortex is not fully developed until we're 25. So you really can't make solid, mature choices, really, before that, because this isn't developed yet. So there's a safe harbor law in the United States that actually protects children from that. They know if a child is swept up in some sort of prostitution ring, right, that they're not a child prostitute. That doesn't exist. There is no child that would choose to have someone rape them 15 to 25 times a night, every night. It's not a choice. Correct. It's just not a choice.
Can you go a little bit more into details about the safe harbor law, like in terms of, you mentioned age and,
yeah, well, the safe harbor law protects kids. And I just really explained it. It's if a child is swept up in a prostitution ring, they're not prosecuted. They're not treated as a prostitute. They're actually treated as a child, and they go a completely separate path, right? That's the whole purpose of the safe harbor law. So human trafficking looks differently online, right? Exploitation looks differently online. I have a funny feeling most of your people have heard about what's happening with Pornhub, right?
Yes.
That is the article that Nicholas Kristof wrote about, the young girl that was on Pornhub. And she said, the Pornhub became my trafficker. She was raped. Someone uploaded that video and people knew who she was. So that environment became her trafficker. It wasn't a person. And, things happen. And in this current environment where our children are lonely, our children are experiencing being isolated, so are their parents, by the way. It has people be more vulnerable to online exploitation. And that's one of the main reasons why you're seeing so many organizations stepping out and doing training programs. We've been at this since March, right? We've been talking to people since March. We created our Parent Tech Talk back in September, and launched our first one in October, because we knew we couldn't, because we specialize in educating kids, right? That's our lane. That's our sweet spot, is educating kids. Specifically, I prefer, like, where I like to be is Title I middle schools, because that's really where the conversation needs to happen. That's our lane. You know, I have a business background. That's what so that's where I'm looking at, is what's my lane. And because we couldn't get into schools and parents became the school teacher and the mom and the head cook and chief bottle washer and all of that, it's like, all right, how do we get this information into parents' hands so they can start the conversation? Because teachers were overworked, and if you kept your kids home and teachers weren't teaching, that was left to the parents. And the parents need to have a way to have that conversation. That's really what we've been providing since March, because it's when we speak online, we speak to everybody. Because right now, our parents are the ones that are going to make the difference with our kids.
That's true. And this is whole reason this channel is about, that we wanted to be a platform for, advocates like yourself, educator like yourself, to educate the people. Because, if a lot of people, just like you mentioned, unfortunately, they still think, they're like, trapped in a container shipped from overseas. And this is happening to everyone, regardless of the nationality, their race, their orientation, whatever. Everyone can be a victim, and this is happening in the backyard. And as you mentioned, just like the number of the online cases that went up 300 to 400%. That number, like I said, just spoke itself. And unfortunately, the parents, they are forced in a way to do like homeschooling, like the old-fashioned manner, regardless of your choice or not. So if you could, for all of us hearing, a lot of us, either we have children, we have, family that are nieces, nephews, or we have friends, what are the advices you would give to those adults in terms of, what they can do to prevent those?
Sure. So the reason why I like to start my conversations with facts is because your brain retains information a couple of ways. Facts people can hold on to, and everything I say, you can go look up online, right? It's verifiable. I don't make this stuff up. And then stories, again, of which you can go look up, because when your brain retains that kind of information, the most important thing I share with parents is, you now have data, right? You now have some stories. Now you've got yourself kind of armed with some tools that after you hear this podcast, you can sit down with your family, or you can sit down with your kids, either on your way from picking them up from school. I used to love having conversations with my daughter in the car, because it was short, it was sweet, she couldn't go anywhere, and we were side by side. When you sit face to face, sometimes that can feel confrontational. When you're side by side with people, it feels more amicable. So she's in the passenger seat, I'm in the driver's seat, and we get to have a conversation. And the conversation can go something like this. Gosh, I was listening to this podcast today, and I heard the most, it scared me. And I thought, oh my gosh, do you know about this? Did you know? And then you can take one of those facts and you can go onto the hotline website and find out how many calls have been to the National Trafficking Hotline. So you've got another fact in there. And then you say, did you know? And they're either going to go, oh yeah, I kind of heard about that. And you go, well, what did you hear? So now you've started a conversation, non-threatening, very in the inquiry kind of space, right? Or if they go, no, I've never heard of that. Go, well, I hadn't either. Let's go research that when we get home, right? And again, you've still started a conversation. Again, it's non-confrontational and in the inquiry. What do you know? What do you think? Have you heard? Because no one likes to be told what to do, especially today. I was having that conversation with my housemate. I go, I am over people telling me what to do. I'm just over it. I'm smart. Let me figure it out. You know what I mean? And kids are double that. They've already been smushed at home. They can't see their friends, and they're relegated to either this thing called a laptop or this thing called a cell phone, right? So that's kind of the environment our kids are like, you're not going to tell me what to do. So if we can really have them discover stuff for themselves, it has them be empowered, and we win. As parents, we win. So you can take a fact. You know, I know you're airing out of Texas, so here's a really great fact. So Florida has the third highest number of calls to the National Trafficking Hotline, behind California and Texas, which means Texas has the second highest number of calls to the National Trafficking Hotline.
Unfortunately, yes.
25% of those calls are kids, about kids. And Houston, as we know, is a hub.
Yes.
So there's 3 facts right there you can share with your child or your family and start a conversation, right? What do you know about that? Have you heard? What do you think about that? Always in the inquiry of really starting to discover what they know, because that does 2 things for you. 1, it starts to get your child to do the critical thinking. I personally believe critical thinking is missing today, and it has them do the thinking. So that is a skill you can teach at home. They may not be getting it at school, not a problem. You want them to start doing the thinking, the problem solving at home. That's the first thing. The second thing it does is it starts to create a safe space, because instead of me as a parent wagging my finger and telling you what you should do or giving you my advice from on high because I'm the parent, now we're more on a level playing field because we're discovering something together. And when you discover something with your child and even allow them to take the lead, that gives them the freedom and the space to come back to you and share and be open. So when that moment comes that they may be dealing with something really difficult, they're going to come to you naturally, because you've opened up this space of curiosity and discovery and openness that allows them to come back to you and offer the same thing up.
That's wonderful. Little I know about children, I just know that if you tell them something, they're gonna do exactly the opposite. So like
not all the time. However, if you look at, our nation was founded on, you're not going to tell me what to do. We dumped tea in the ocean, right? You're going to tax our tea. We're not taking the tea. It's just kind of our mindset, which is what has America be so unique. And people wonder, how do we do all the things that we do? Well, that's kind of part of it. We're a little defiant to pressure of being told what to do, and that's not a bad thing. You want to be smart about it, but it has us do the thinking to push back on the status quo. If you look at most organizations out in the world, the ones that are really successful allow their staff and allow their team to push back a little bit on the statement, we've always done it that way. Okay, we're not in the same time when that happened. Let's look and see if there's something new. If if the same thing's gonna work right now, great. If not, let's at least look, let's at least be in the inquiry. You can have the same kind of conversation with your kids, really creating resilient children. I read a great article this morning. I will email it to you, from the Harvard Business Review, about how do you manage your team when they're exhausted and so are you.
Wow, that's great.
Parenting's the same way. Our parents are exhausted. They're having to do more stuff than they've ever had to do before. And then put on top of everything else, oh yeah, by the way, your child might be being recruited online by some predator. Last nail in that coffin. I'm done. I'm toast. Call me. I just want to talk about it. It's totally understandable. And by bringing compassion to our parents and compassion to our teachers and compassion to our kids, you can actually start to open up some of these conversations. Because you can say, the second thing I like to coach parents to do is like, look, share what you're dealing with. Because when you're vulnerable with your kids, it lets them know you're human, that you're not perfect, you don't have all the answers. And whoever said parents should have all the answers, I don't know where they got that, but it doesn't work that way. And it gives your kids the freedom and space to fail. There was a great article on LinkedIn from the founder of Spanx, and she said her dad asked her every day when she came home from school, "What'd you fail at today, honey?" And gave her a high five. Because out of whatever she failed at, she got to learn and discover something, right?
I remember that story, yes.
It's such a great article. So that's kind of the environment you create with your kids when you share a failure that you did when you were younger. My daughter knows everything about me, and I mean everything. Age appropriate, right? As she got older is when I shared stuff with her. However, it had her get them. I'm human. I have feelings. I have emotions. I have past experiences that all come with me when we're in a conversation.
That's a great
and
way
that's
to
what,
connect.
yeah, and that's what parents do have experience. And so, it's like I walked 2 miles uphill in snow, so our grandparents and great grandparents used to say, we can be the ones going, look, we were around before there were cell phones. We actually had to talk to people. So let's talk about how we can talk to people efficiently and effectively on this thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah, that totally, that goes to my next question. So can you show our parents about, or our listeners who has children in the household or, families and relatives, what are the signs, like, whether it's on the website, whether it's on the cell phone, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
on the app? Can you tell us more
Mm-hmm.
about that?
Absolutely. It's really, see, predators aren't, people have this vision of what a trafficker or what a predator looks like. Quite frankly, they look like your next door neighbor. They don't always have, thick chains around their thing and driving some Cadillac that goes up and down and fuzzy dice. It doesn't look that way like the movies say it does. These are everyday business people. Okay. And this is a business for them because this is a $150 billion industry, Aileen.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
And it's not it's not going anywhere soon. So the faster we can interrupt it and prevent our kids from getting sucked in, the faster we can drop that revenue, right? So part of the thing that predators know is the teenage years are what are teenagers known to be?
I guess they like to have fun and they're online all the time.
Yeah, they're also defiant, unruly, want to make their own rules. I've got this all figured out. I don't need you, mom and dad. I've got it. I'm 14. My head's not fully developed yet, but I got it. Right there. And because this isn't fully developed, they go from I was in a foster group home yesterday talking about this, and they're like, I thought I was bipolar. I'm like, no, you're in puberty and developing, right? When they wake up in the morning, they can be super happy. By the time they get in the car or on their way to the bus, they're really grumpy and angry. And you're talking a span of 15 to 30 minutes. You're like, what happened? It's just the swath of chemicals that's going on in their bodies. And they think in that moment that's all there is, right? If I'm this angry, then I'm always going to be this angry, not remembering that they were super happy 15 minutes ago or that they were laughing 15 minutes in the future, right? Predators know this. So the challenge for most parents is to look at these behaviors and go, is this my angsty teenager? Or is something going on that I need to be in an inquiry about? Okay. That's why predators target 11 to 14-year-olds, because they know. All right. So as a parent, there's really 3 things you can look for, especially if you've started to develop a great relationship with them over time and all of a sudden they shut down and they don't talk to you anymore. And it's an all of a sudden kind of thing. It's not a gradual thing. It's like, over the weekend you were best buddies and, talking about all kinds of things. And then Monday morning, you're like, hi, honey, I love you, whatever. And that's a behavior that you can look for. It's like a switch, and it stays that way. Because what predators say is in their grooming conversations over time, because how a lot of this happens is I'm online and I'm complaining about something. Because if you look at social media, it's just it's just opinions, it's a sea of opinions, right? Or complaints. So people will be like, my mom, blah, 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 my dad, my best friend, my boyfriend, whatever, fill in the blank. Because it's a momentary upset.
Right.
They blast it out on Instagram or do a video on TikTok or, whatever the latest app is tomorrow. And predators are on there circling like sharks, waiting to dive in to say, oh yeah, my boyfriend did the same thing too. And there's a little picture of a little 14-year-old girl that looks just like me, or a handsome 14-year-old boy, right?
Yes.
And you start to bond. called trauma bonding. And this can happen quickly. It can also happen over time. With the environment now, it's happening much quicker. There was a little girl here in Orlando, 11 years old, was groomed and recruited in 7 days by a 26-year-old from Georgia.
Wow.
It can happen that fast. Okay. So getting that instant, personality alteration. If when you walk into their room and they turn their phone over super quickly, like it's just, like that look, you got your hand in the cookie jar look, that look, or when you walk into the room and they drop their laptop lid really quickly, right? That kind of immediate, quick behavior. The other thing too is they stop talking about their regular friends, and all they talk about is this new one or two friends. And there's a thing now called IBF, hashtag IBF, hashtag internet best friend. So they are pouring their hearts out to people they've never met because they've bonded over what's happening out in the environment. So for parents, you can be like, so who's your IBF? Hashtag IBF. And kids are going to be like, wait, what? And yeah, who's your internet best friend today? And kids are going to be like, how do you know about, now you've gained this instant credibility with them because you're starting to talk their language. And another really great thing to do is on our website, there's a parent toolkit, and I encourage everyone to go in there and download it because it's got all the apps you want to take a look at. And if you're not familiar with any of them, like Hot or Not or Ask FM or, TikTok, I will not put TikTok on my phone. I won't do it. If I had a child, they wouldn't have it either. And I really don't care who's using it. I really don't, because I know who's got the data on the back end. Not okay with that. So, you say, hey, I was listening to this podcast today and they had me download this thing and I've never heard of this app. And I went in to try and download it and man, there's some really interesting things on here. Do you have that app? Again, you're not accusatory, you're asking. Or, I don't really get this Snapchat thing. It's like a 15-second, can you show me how to use this? Now, all of a sudden, they're the teacher, you're the student. And you can be, well, can I see yours? Can I see what you're doing on yours? Right then and there. How they react is going to tell you how they're using it. They're like, sure, Mom, I'm here. Or if they're like, well, you know. Then the last thing I'm going to share is, as parents, we have a sixth sense. Trust it. That feeling right here in your gut, what I'm talking about?
Yes.
When something feels off, trust it, because something is off. And if you can't put your finger on it, again, you want to be in the inquiry versus the accusatory. Nobody likes to be told what to do, and particularly a lonely, isolated, frustrated, upset teenager. And I had a addiction therapist on one of my parent tech talks a couple of months ago, and we talked about social media addiction. It's real. It's a dopamine hit. Our kids are getting our parents are getting a dopamine hit off this too, right? And if you take their phone away, I want you to liken it to taking cold turkey opioids away from an opioid addict. The same behaviors are going to show up. The same experiences are going to show up. And we are not trained therapists. We are not trained as parents to know how to deal with that. So there are actually gaming rehab centers for people that have become so addicted to video games, they have to go to a rehab center. Okay,
I actually know a few, yes.
Yeah, that's how addicted this stuff is, and parents don't know. And the earlier you give your kids the phones, the sooner that's going to be their dopamine hit because their brain is being wired. So when you start to integrate new conversations in about social media and you start to have the conversation with them, we highly recommend, and I'm just going to say your kid's on the phone for 4 hours a night, right? We'll start off just like if you're reducing caffeine intake. You don't just, I don't know if anybody has ever cut coffee cold turkey the headache on the third day, oh my God, it's the worst thing ever. And that's why, you know, when they tell people to go off caffeine, it's like you go a whole cup of coffee, you know, and then, you know, through the whole week, then you do like, you know, 3/4 of a cup of caf and a quarter decaf, and you do that until you're, you know, you literally wean your body off the caffeine. It's the same thing with social media and video games. Is if you're going to remove 15 minutes, you want to put 15 minutes in of another activity. You know, maybe it's drawing, maybe it's coloring, maybe it's out for a walk, maybe it's singing, maybe it's dancing, maybe it's playing a board game, you know, maybe it's, you know, going to the beach or going for a hike, whatever it is, you gotta increase that brain space. Can't just let it be idle with that 15 minutes. And there's some really great websites on our page too that can point people in the direction of some really fun, you know, chalkboard, sidewalk chalk. If you've got a high schooler, that's not something they've done on this break. Take them out and draw something with chalk. You know, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they love art. Kids love expressing themselves. And it's a really great way to fill up that 15 minutes until the next thing you know, that 4 hours is down to maybe an hour and a half. And as a family, you've become closer as a unit because you're playing board games, you're out doing walks, you're out creating things, you know, using that part of the brain that starts to heal it. Because here's the thing, their brains are literally being rewired while they're on this. I highly recommend parents watching The Social Dilemma with their kids. Because when you watch that movie and you get the intentionality behind all of these platforms, it's going to have your kids do some thinking, right? And after the film, it's a great way to be like, okay, now I'm a little upset about all the social media, you know, what's happening. How do we break free from that and engage as a family how to solve that problem versus as the parent coming from down on high?
That's totally true. You know, you mentioned about the addiction, and even as adults, I know a few that can be addicted to and they tend to have their own explanation about why this is good or whatever. You know, I think there is a line that we draw as long as they're not being hurt or hurting anyone else. Okay, there's a line, but in this case, there are people who are actually taking advantage of these innocent children that
Yep.
you know that their brain are not fully developed, so that is a no for sure. Now it's interesting you mentioned about video games. I've heard about Twitch and so do you think that's something that parents should watch out for as well?
Absolutely. Look, you know, approximately 30 to 40% of the kids recruited are young boys.
That's
What do
true
boys
because
do?
yes, it's
They
not
play
just
video
girls.
games. Yeah, they play video games. Well, my daughter was a gamer, you know, and I remember hearing her because her bedroom was up north of the, you know, up a stairwell from the kitchen. And I could hear her playing the video games and it'd be like, yes, I'm a girl. No, you can't talk to me that way. I'm leaving the game. Right? You know, she had clear boundaries when she was online playing video games. And it'd be like, nope, we don't know you. You're not allowed into this game because I was her mom, right? She knew.
Yes.
A lot of parents don't know this. And people automatically assume girls are trafficked, not boys. No, 30% to 40% of boys are trafficked and they find them on video games. And where, you know, I had to go through 18 screens of my friend's Xbox to find the parent controls.
Oh, wow.
If I'm not tech savvy, I'm not going to figure out how to go into my parent controls and learn how to really create boundaries for my child. I've heard of kids, parents have a master switch on their, you know, internet and their VPN, and they turn it off. And kids have stayed up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. They're so jonesing to be online and done a workaround on the VPN.
Oh, wow.
So, and the behaviors when parents have taken their kids off video games and off social media, it's like they get their child back. You know, their brain's starting to heal. And part of, you know, Discord is attached to all the video games, and it's a chat app that you can keep talking to people you've been playing video games with. And that's where recruiters come in, because what they'll do is they'll offer the boys hey, take your shirt off so I can take a picture and I'll help you level up to the next level, right? Do this and I'll help you do that in the game. And
So yeah, it's very interesting. I have come across people dressed very little, the cosplays, and came across, I believe it's Twitch, and they were all dressed like anime and fake wig and like
so,
in the Japanese word kawaii. So what do you think about that?
well, my daughter's a huge video gamer, and she actually was going to be on Twitch. And, when she said, Mom, you know, these girls are wearing their shirts down to here and, all this makeup and all this lipstick and all this stuff to play video games, and people pay to watch them play video games. She's like, I'm not doing that. And you got to get my kid's a good video game player. Like, she's good. And she could have gone down that path to make a lot of money. But, the thing that I really want to leave people with is we were having these conversations for a long time. It wasn't just an overnight phenomenon dialogue, right? And, she used to invite me to go to MegaCon. Now you got to I like DC movies. I like the Marvel comics. I am not that girl. However, because my daughter invited me, I went. Because when you bond with your kids like that over stuff, because I knew what she was doing on Twitch. I actually opened a Twitch account so I could watch her play when she and her friend were playing. We went to MegaCon together. One year we actually even dressed up. And I remember, her seeing some of these outfits, and, she and I would give these side glances, and she'd lean over and she'd go, man, I'm glad you're my mom. Because we might have the typical mother-daughter arguments about what are you going to wear, what are you not going to wear, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. My daughter's always been appropriate. But to know that there's a parent out there allowing their child to dress like that, you're already starting to blur the lines. You're just already blurring the lines. And, when we talk to kids, teenagers in particularly, I say, I, on behalf of all adults, apologize to you. And they'll kind of look at me like, what are you talking about, Miss Jan? And I said, look, do you remember way back when you were little, and whether it was a family reunion, block party, holiday party, doesn't matter. I said, and all these people are there. And then, the aunts, the uncles, the friends, the family friends, all those people show up. It's at the end of the party when people would leave, your parents would be like, go say goodbye to Aunt so-and-so or Uncle such and such, right? That's what parents did. And I'll say to the kids, I said, do you remember there was always that one person you didn't want to have anything to do with, but you were little, you couldn't say why. It's not like Aunt so-and-so had a big mole on her face. It was like, I just don't want to hug this person. I said, and they made you hug them anyway. And they'll all nod their head. I go, so I'm apologizing on behalf of all adults for making you do something you didn't want to do with your body. I said, right then and there, we let you know it was okay to have someone else tell you what to do with your body. So I coach parents all the time. It's, if your child does not want to hug that person goodbye, it's okay. I really don't care if it's if some family members get upset. I don't, because kids and dogs have great radar for stuff. They do. They know when something's off, and you got to trust your kids. If they don't want to hug that person, if they don't want to sit on that person's lap, if they don't want to, please don't make them, to save face.
It's that
because
sixth sense you were talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, because what you're doing is you're setting them up for someone else telling them what to do with their body. Versus, honey, I get you don't want to hug Uncle so-and-so, not a problem. When you're ready to hug him goodbye, you do that. And just that right there takes the pressure off the child, right? It's like, whew, okay, good. I didn't like them. And also back in their subconscious, they get that they have choice. you know, and when we talk to the kids about this, you know, I share with them, I said, look, there's nothing you can do that would have your parent not love you, really. Now, they might be disappointed. That's part of what it is to be human. We get disappointed in things, right? I said, but I invite you to give your parents space and grace for if something happens and someone sends an inappropriate picture to you on your phone, if someone asks for an inappropriate picture on your phone, if you actually sent an inappropriate picture on your phone, not knowing that it wasn't okay, not knowing, and you finally come clean, your parents are going to react. They're just not reacting at you because you don't know any better. You don't know. And quite frankly, neither your parents. All they know is our job is to protect you and keep you safe. And somehow somebody got through the ether to my child, and I'm mad. And so my reaction is going to be anger, and it's not at you. I said, so you got to give your parents space to be upset because someone's potentially harming their child, okay? And then I'll coach parents on the other end. When your child comes to you with this, okay, because they will, if you start to have these conversations and you start to bond with them and you start to, right, they start opening up, at some point in time, they are going to come and have that conversation with you. My daughter was dating this kid in high school, and like, you know, you can just tell when people are shysters. This kid was just a shyster. He was a little manipulator trying to get stuff, and I started to see through him after a couple of times hanging out with him, but my daughter was just loved him right at that age. Love. And he actually tried to do something with her. And she didn't tell me for 6 months, and she said, Mom, because I knew you'd kill him. I wouldn't have killed him. I said, but there would have been some very strong words and very strong languaging, and his parents would have been involved along with the police, you know. And she's like, that's why. So, you know, so there's the, and we, you know, she eventually told me, but we're close. And it took her time to talk to me. Okay. So imagine if you don't have a strong relationship with your kid and stuff like this is happening, they're not going to come to you. So if you've created this space over time and then they finally come to you and they're straight up about something, first of all, believe them. Children don't lie about abuse. If aunt or uncle or family friend, whomever, touched your child inappropriately, believe them, because it's the worst thing a parent can do. The second thing I encourage parents to do is that I just want you to take a deep breath and hold it for 3 seconds before you say a word. Professional NBA referees are trained to hold their breath for 3 seconds before they blow the whistle to make sure their eyeballs connected with the data in their brain to make sure that's really what the call they're about to make. Oh. I said, what comes out of your mouth that the very next moment when your child says, Mom, I sent an inappropriate picture to a boy and now he's threatening me, you got to be super careful about what comes out of your mouth. Because if you get angry at them, you've lost your shot. You take that deep breath in. Remember this moment when Miss Jan coached you too as a parent. And you just breathe out and go, honey, it's okay. We're going to take care of this. Tell me all about it. And then just listen. They'll give you everything. And then you pick up the phone, you call the police because it's inappropriate. Exploitation, child exploitation is illegal. Sending inappropriate pictures, forcing a child to do that is illegal. And children think nothing of it and they think they have choice. They really don't. This isn't fully developed yet, right? And we want them to be empowered. And we want them to feel safe to come talk to you. So when your kids ask you to go to MegaCon, when your kids ask you to go to concerts, when your kids ask you to go whatever, right? Whatever that thing is, to play Scrabble, to play dice, to play dolls, do that. As crazy as it may sound, because there will come a day when they won't invite you anymore. And then you'll regret that. And it's how you start to bond and get connected with your kids in a way that no one can come between them. My daughter is a grown adult. My kid's extraordinary, right? And she has her own opinions on things. They're not the same as mine, and I raised her that way. The difference is we can argue over about highly debatable topics, and we'll take time to cool off because we're committed to the relationship over being right. And that happened over decades of bonding, creating closeness, being straight up with each other, forgiving one another. Because we've had some conversations that most families would kill one another off. Okay. But we're committed to the relationship over me or her being right. And that's when you share yourself with your kids. And it's like, look, I want you to grow up being happy, healthy, and independent. Interdependent. I've actually changed that word out. Interdependent, right? Happy, healthy, and interdependent. It's a healthy human being. And I want you to have your own opinions. We may not always agree. Your opinion's yours, mine's opinion's mine. And we're entitled to both. Doesn't mean either one's right or wrong. Right? That's going to create a functioning member out in society. And they're not going to be targeted by people, because they've got strong beliefs, they've got high levels of confidence, and they won't be messed with. My daughter's one of the bravest people I know.
Yes, I'm so proud of her, even though I've never met her, from the two examples that you talked about, her turning people down from playing video games to her comment at the MegaCon. You brought her up really well, and I'm so proud of you as a great parent on bonding on these. And like you said, it takes decades to bond with your kids. And so here Jen is definitely a success story, and especially that you work in a field, and how like we talked about earlier, how you approach them and not accuse them but more making inquiries, and these are all great tactics. Thank you so much, Jen.
You're welcome.
I'm really grateful to have you on board, and I know that you're a really busy person. You have made so much achievements, and you have trained so many people. And so that was what you advise for our listeners, whether they're children, their parents, they're people who may be new to human trafficking, people who may already know about that and who are advocates. And these are all very great information. And would you like to share, some takeaway? And I know you wanted to share the hotline number as well.
Absolutely. Well, if anybody's ever watched any of my YouTube videos, any of my interviews, been to any of my talks, they know I end with three things. One is, I invite you to share what you've learned. Take one fact, take one story, and just share it with someone, and have it be in the inquiry space. Hey, did you know? Houston has the second highest number of calls to the National Trafficking Hotline? Did you know the average age of entry is 11 to 14? You start a conversation. That's how things can alter. You literally start a conversation. Two, you want to put the hotline number in your phone. Really easy number to remember. It's 888-3737. 888. You can call it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's 100% anonymous, and you tell them what you're seeing, and they'll coach you on what to do. And if you see something really happening, please do not enter. Please just stand back, take a picture of the license plate, and call 911. We want trained professionals in there handling this, because these are not good human beings. They weren't born that way, and it's how they ended up. And we want you to stay safe, right? So you want to call 911 if you see something immediately happening. And then the third thing is go get an action. Go volunteer someplace. Share, go follow some of these people on social media. Share their posts. Get involved locally. Make a contribution. All of these 501c3s most of them operate on donations from people. They don't have $1 million grants. They don't have $100,000 grants. Most of the ones that are on the ground doing the real work operate from the generosity of people like you. So I invite you to find a couple of them and, become monthly donors, because sustainability means everything to them and to me and to us, right? And the last thing I want to invite is we have a really great program. It's called the Mission Ambassador Program, where we actually train people to have this conversation. So if that is something of interest to you, you all want to get involved with us. I know that we're going to have the website down at the bottom, but you want to go to the volunteer page and click on Mission Ambassador. We invite you to come partner with us and be part of the solution to prevent our kids from being really lured into a horrific life. We want to save lives. We want to prevent them from having that kind of trauma, and you can be one of those everyday local heroes.
Thank you so much, Jan. Yes,
Welcome.
we will absolutely be linking the Mission Ambassador, the link as well as the toolkit so that you can access
Mhm.
to the apps and the other useful tools as well. And if you're watching later in, this is the Miss Texas show. Like Jan said, if you think this show is helpful, please share and subscribe because we have a lot more content coming up. But thank you again for your time,
My
Jan.
pleasure.